Welcome back to the Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and here with me is Omar Pozos, my co-host and husband. How you doing, Omar?
I'm doing great. It's our first week of 2025. I'm excited to dive in. I need a little bit more excitement out of you. But yeah, I'm doing good. I think we've got a cold front coming to Florida, so I'm bundled up. But other than that, feeling great. How are you?
Yeah, it's pretty warm out right now. Our dog is doing indoor, outdoor, cold heat cycles. She's definitely, she, I think, has been inspired by our cold plunge and sauna routine. And so she's decided that she wants to go out and lay in the sun for a period of time, and then she wants to come in and be in the air conditioning, and then she wants to go back out, and it's very fun for us.
I think she's just a diva, to be totally honest with you. She comes in and does what she wants around the house.
Yep. Well, today's episode, so this is our first official episode of 2025 coming out.
Should we hit him with the...
You love the sound effects.
I do love the sound effects for anybody listening.
Yes. So if you're listening to this the week it came out, in the prior week, I actually made a post on New Year's Eve sharing about some of the things that I reflected on 2024 of things that I had tried or implemented. And that I ultimately was like, this is something I want to continue doing into 2025 for my own health, for managing my hormone health and really optimizing my health as a whole. And as I shared these things, I was like, I really need to give a lot more context and information here. So I made a little bit of a mini training, and then I decided I wanted to go even more into it on the podcast here. Because I'm constantly, I guess, like treating myself a little bit as a guinea pig because year over year, I'm constantly learning so much from new research, from, what's maybe becoming just popularized in the field of health and fitness. And ultimately, I try a lot of different things, and I definitely don't share everything I try as I try it because I'm trying things to see, like, is this a hoax? Is this, something that maybe could be potentially beneficial for me or my clients. And so as I then am reflecting on the year, I want to pull out some of the things that some of them I have shared. Some of them won't be surprises if you're, a longtime listener or if you follow me closely on social media. But some of these will probably be things that this might be the first time you've heard me talk about this. And I'm excited to share some of the things that I've loved from 2024 and will be taking into 2025 with me.
Yeah, let's dive in. What you got for us today?
Yeah, so first one on my list is the flush. And we've talked about the flush a good bit on the podcast throughout this year. And this wasn't something that was new to 2024. I've actually been doing the flush for a couple years now. But what I specifically am pulling from 2024 and carrying with me into 2025 is making the flush an annual thing that I do. I actually aim to do it 1 to 2 times per year because I find that it's a really, really good kind of like tune-up for your body. It's a great way to, I always like to use the analogy of it's like kind of getting an oil changed in your car. You got to do it every once in a while if you want to keep your car running the right way. And the same thing with your body. You could be a healthy person, but you probably still need to just kind of give your body that little bit of a tune-up every once in a while. And this is a great way to really make sure your thyroid, your adrenals are in tip-top shape, really feeding up, giving a good amount of very, very nutrient-dense food, really just making sure your liver is in a good spot. You're opening up the detox pathways, getting everything kind of cleared out. So if you have built up any, gunk in the body from all the things we're exposed to, maybe things that we're ingesting, whatever it is, it's a great way to go ahead and kind of get that all cleared out of your body. And ultimately just really make sure you are nourished and in a good spot.
Yeah, and that's, by the way, that's episode 182 that you were referring to. Well, you weren't really referring to, but episode 182, does your body need an oil change? If you guys want to learn a little bit more about it. I've done the flush a couple times too, and I mean, realistically, we've probably been doing it for like 2 years now, I would say, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think I'm actually doing a flush right now as we're recording this, and I think this is my 4th time or 5th time maybe of flushing.
Well, I was just about to ask, and there's no right or wrong answer, but what do you think is like your favorite part of the flush, and what's your least favorite part of the flush? Oh, gosh.
I mean, if you say like favorite part, obviously I would say like how I coming out of the flush. Like you feel so energized, you feel really good. It's such a good reset in so many ways. My least favorite part, well, it's hard to say too because the flush in general is like a overall kind of like there are things that are the same across different people's flush protocols, but it is very individualized depending on different people. So like the things that I say are things that I typically do, but they might not be something that like people who are listening would do in their flush. So for myself, I would say I really don't like apple cider vinegar. And
I was hoping you would, that's where you were going to go with it, because I think that's funny.
Yeah, I make the ugliest faces when I do a little shot of apple cider vinegar in the morning.
I think you make it worse because you like dilute it in water, or you put...
No, I've just been doing straight shot.
Okay, that's the easiest way. I'm like, just get it over with. Just drink it and be done with it.
Yeah, no, but I've tried doing it in a lot of other ways because some people like it. Some people will like, I've heard some people that will like mix it with some carbonated water, and then like someone was saying that they even will add some like
that
stevia.
Sounds terrible.
And they were like, oh, I love it. It's so good. And I'm like, oh, can't get on that train. But yeah, so that's the first one on the list is really just doing ongoing flushes. And I think it's something that, really more and more as like year over year, as Vital Spark grows and becomes more knowledgeable, and really just as we bring on more and more experts onto our team, the flush is something that I have found more and more implementing with almost all of our clients at certain points in their journey. For some, it's right off the bat. For others, it's much later in their journey. But I am finding that I think everybody probably would benefit from doing a flush at some point in their life. Of course, there's exceptions to the rule. But I think pretty much everybody could benefit from doing a flush at some point. And then a lot of people are probably like me, to where maybe you want to optimize your health and maybe you have a little bit of a sluggish liver. I'm somebody that does have a little bit of a liver that tends to get kind of like clogged up pretty easily. That's why my body's a little bit more sensitive to things that other people are not sensitive to. It's just the reality. It's something I've found from genetic testing, which is a whole nother rabbit hole I could go down. We're not going to talk about that here. But ultimately, that's a big reason why, as well, I like to do a flush 1 to 2 times a year to make sure that I am just really taking care of my liver and optimizing my metabolism in that way. Now, the second one on my list is follicular phase progressive overload training. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, seriously. Jinx.
And what I actually mean here, so I think for anybody who's familiar with strength training, you probably are familiar with the term progressive overload. If you are not familiar with that term, what is that ultimately referring to? Well, we're talking about you would be following a strength training program that progressively you add more load onto your body. So that load could come in the form of increasing reps kind of week over week. It could look like increasing the weight that you're using week over week, but it's ultimately a very structured approach to where you're doing the same kind of exercises for the same, the same order, the same sets, all of that, but you're overloading by just adding incrementally more and more volume, essentially. And something that I have really dialed in 2024 and found that my body is loving is doing progressive overload cycles, specifically in my follicular phase of my cycle. So meaning that kind of first half of my cycle from really from like days 1 to 17-ish is about kind of where I ovulate. And that's really from your period to ovulation. That's where your body is most primed to push a little bit more in the gym.
What are the different phases again?
Menstruation, follicular, ovulation, and luteal.
Got it.
But the reality is follicular really does refer to just like the first half of the cycle. So technically menstruation would be involved in that. And same thing for like luteal is technically the entire half of the cycle after ovulation. It's kind of like ovulation is really just that split point. But to be more precise, we often refer to it in really 4 phases.
Got it.
But so ultimately I had found, if you've been listening to me for a long time, you know that in the past I was really big on like pushing super hard in the gym. I always like wanted to be a little bit more athletic in the gym. But I just have found myself over and over again in cycles where my body, as I get to that point of trying to push and trying to do more progressive overload, my recovery goes into the gutter. My body will not recover from higher training volume. And that's where I've found that if I stay on the same program for longer lengths of time, so where in the past I might have done the same program for like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, now I follow the same program for more like 12 to 24 weeks. And that's because only part of the month am I really actually actively following the program and overloading. The other part of the month, I'm either pulling out of the gym completely, or I might still follow the program, but just more so bring weights really down, maybe reduce reps, like keep it a lot easier. But I am just letting myself kind of like utilize time differently. And in doing so, I find that my recovery is way better. And so over the course of time, I'm actually gaining more muscle and gaining more strength, which is exciting. Next one on my list is silent walks. So you guys know I am a big walk girly. I love my walks, love getting out and just moving around. But in the past, I was very much like a multitasker. I would be walking and also always have something in my ears. I was constantly like consuming podcasts or listening to music, like whatever it is. I was not just walking. I had to walk and do something else. Maybe I was even on my phone, like answering messages, emails, things like that. And something I've been very intentional about in 2024 is taking silent walks. Now, granted, some of these walks, like if I'm doing it with you.
I cannot get that song out of my head. In my head, I'm like, silent walk. It's too close to Christmas. That's why.
Yeah, well, that's a glimpse into what happens when I go on walks with Omar. There's typically some sort of outward singing and talking.
I really think maybe I'm like undiagnosed ADHD, but my brain just goes 100 miles an hour. Maybe I need to practice some more silent walks myself.
Yeah, I would encourage it. But I believe that silent walks, it's one of those things that, like, especially if you find it to be uncomfortable or something, you're like, oh, don't want to do that. I love, listening to things while I walk. I love doing different things while I walk. You probably need some silent walks in your life, because I was in your shoes and I found that once I started taking more silent walks, really like maybe just leave technology at home and maybe just grab my dog and just go walk around. And in doing so, I'm forced to be alone with my thoughts. I'm, more present. I'm looking around, I'm noticing sights and sounds and different things. And in doing so, I found that it became very restorative for my nervous system. Mm. And now it's something that I crave and I love. And it's like, if I don't get a silent walk in each day, I don't quite feel like my best self. It's like a mental health thing now at this point.
Yeah. Can you read this part right here? What you have on the outline really quick?
What?
So the silent, silent equals nervous system supporting, and then overall movement is muy bueno. I love it.
Yeah, well, I wanted you to feel included in the outline.
I appreciate that. For our Mexican listeners and Spanish speakers, muy bueno.
Yeah. No, that's, of course, another aspect to walks in general is walking. It's so important, so intentional to make sure that you are supporting your body on so many levels. It's great for blood sugar management. There's so many benefits to walking that we aren't going to necessarily dive into all of them on this episode because we could go down a rabbit hole there. Next on my list is scheduled playtime.
Whenever I see the word like just playtime, I think of like kindergartners. I'm like, all right, playtime, recess, here we go.
Well, I mean, we all have a little bit of kids still inside of us that I think we all need to like nurture the inner child. And that's something I really fell into in 2024. And to be honest with you guys, so I, as probably a lot of riding horses has been a huge part of my life for a long time. It's a big part of my story. It's something that really was like who I was for a long period of time. And what I kind of found is over the last few years, really I'd say probably the last like 4 to 5 years, I kind of just fell out of it. And I think I was more in this mindset of like, I went from being hyper competitive in it and it was just like consumed my life to being like, oh, I don't want anything to do with it right now. I need a total break from it. And then as I started to come back to, once we moved back here to Florida and my family has horses and I was kind of in this limbo of like, I kind of want to get back into it because I still just deep down, I love horses, but I just feel kind of like in this weird spot of, I don't think I want to get into showing. I don't feel like I have enough time and just like energy to give to like a sport right now. And so I just continue to stay in the like, all or nothing. I'm just going to go on nothing because I can't give it my all. But this year, actually before the hurricanes, unfortunately, we had to put down one of our longtime horses who was one that my sister and I kind of grew up showing with, and he was just a really great horse and one that I hoped to still get back into the show pen with him one day. And so with us unexpectedly having to put him down, that kind of woke me up to realize, life is short. And if I love horses, I need to find a way to make it work into my life. And so that's where I started scheduling in my kind of playtime, as I say. And it's just once a week, I actually book a riding lesson. So it's not something I can cancel. It's not something I can move. It's like on the schedule. It starts at that time. And if I don't, if I need to cancel, like I'm screwed. So like I actually treat it as an appointment like anything else. And in doing so, even though sometimes it feels inconvenient, sometimes I'm kind of stressed of like, I don't have enough time and I can't, I got to drive over the barn. Every time after I come back, I'm so glad I did it and I feel more like myself, So that's something that I just encourage everybody to get more into putting something on your calendar, no matter who you are, no matter the demands of your life. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be time consuming, but find something that makes you just feel like a kid again, makes you feel like you are playing, makes you just feel like you are having fun, and put that on your calendar on a regular basis. And I think that is so important for our health. Very, very important for our health.
I feel like that one is so hard. I mean, we were talking about this last night as we did our 2024 reflections, but I'm like, I don't have anything that like makes me feel like a kid. So I think maybe at times just literally sitting down with yourself and like just asking yourself, like, what kind of hobbies do you want to get into? What is it that, you know, you want to explore this year? And it could be something as simple as like, I don't know, going for a walk and just kind of doing something like that. But to me, it feels so hard because I'm always like, go, 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 go. I'm like, what do I do now that I'm a little bit older to get back into, you know, my younger self or into my interests and all that stuff? So still working on that part myself.
Yeah, my mindset coach, Leslie, who we've had in the podcast before, she always would challenge me of like, it's important to broaden your life. And I'm someone that like openly I'll say like, I don't necessarily believe in like work-life balance as people talk about that. Like I don't seek that kind of like balance the way people typically seek it. Like our work is a huge part of our life. We do it together. Right. It really is a big part of who we are as people. But I do still think it's important to broaden your life outside of just work and not let work be your entire life. And that's where I think being intentional about adding in other like activities, hobbies, interests, just other space in your life can be so important for making us dynamic human beings and really helping our mental and therefore physical health. So that's been a big one. Next on my list is lymphatic drainage. So this is something...
Drainage.
Yeah. This is something that I've been doing a lot more of in 2024. It's something I started to toy with in 2023. But it was this year that I actually started doing some lymphatic drainage massages, which I've really enjoyed. It's something that I think... What?
I'm just laughing because I know you enjoyed the massages, but the masseuse girl, the therapist, just wasn't the best. So it's funny to me because you were so frustrated at times with her.
Yeah, well, that was my first lymphatic massage. Yeah, that was just an example of not good customer service.
She like promised Vanessa to show up at a certain time, would reschedule.
Well, it just was like
cancel.
a scheduled appointment, and then like would no show, and then would be like, oh, I'm gonna come tomorrow, and then would no show again, and then would like that happened multiple times.
And then I think she just stopped texting you.
Yeah, she just ghosted. Yeah, so that's where
if you can find a good massage therapist,
found a different one, and it's been great. And I do it's not something I do super often because I will be honest, lymphatic massage, it's not like as enjoyable as like getting like a deep tissue massage, but it is really good. No. Oh. No, that's the thing why it's not as enjoyable. I mean, it's like it's very light.
Oh, okay.
So it feels good, but it's just not like if you're someone like me where you're like, I want someone to get in there. They're not getting in there. It's very light and kind of like superficial because they're just moving that fluid underneath the skin to the lymph nodes and kind of helping opening up the lymph nodes and getting everything drained out, essentially. And I think for people that aren't familiar with like what is the purpose of that, well, lymphatic drainage is really helpful for your overall health because I like to think of it as like the lymphatic system is kind of like this. It's almost like I think it was almost like your trash disposal system to where, especially as you're detoxing. So think of something like a flush, which is something I'm doing right now. My body is releasing anything that might be stored up in the cells at this time that it needs to be released out. Well, now it's being released out. Where does it go? It needs to get to those clusters of lymph nodes, which are basically like the trash cans, and actually get taken out of the body. What happens for a lot of people, and myself included, and I noticed this kind of early on just from I actually had a mentor kind of point it out to me when they were a little bit more of expertise in lymphatic drainage, and they could point out on my photos and say, actually, you can see that there's a little bit of static lymph fluid on your body, and that's where you look more puffy in like these part of your limbs and like some of these areas. And so I started doing more lymphatic drainage work, which not just the massages, but also incorporating dry brushing, which I really enjoy as well. And I think that that's made a big difference, not just in how I feel, but just in overall aesthetics too, because just don't look as puffy. Next one on my list is weekly yoga classes. So I used to do yoga at home. I would do like the Down Dog yoga app, and I really loved that. But in 2024, I challenged myself to start actually going to a studio and doing classes once a week, and it's been huge. I would say really primarily doing more of like the vinyasa, the yin yoga, keeping it super restorative. I don't do it as a workout. I do it purely for nervous system management and relaxation. And it's been a huge thing. I think there's just something to be said for like going somewhere and having someone like tell you to focus on your breath and like actually force you to do that. That makes such a big difference.
Yeah, we're very lucky that we have a studio literally like right down the street from us. But I almost always like very close to falling asleep in those classes where I feel so zen.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one is caffeine limitations. So I started putting limits on my caffeine intake this year. Well, actually, I should back up. I started really putting limits a few years ago when I got to a point where I was drinking like probably 600 milligrams caffeine per day on average. Like
how many cups of coffee? Like how many milligrams of caffeine are in a cup of coffee?
So it depends on the type of coffee.
30 to 50.
But I can tell you how I got to that 600. That was from like drinking pre-workout that were like 200 to 300 milligrams of a pre-workout, then having a venti cold brew from Starbucks, which I've done the math before and how much caffeine's in that, but that's a high caffeine drink.
Like 200 milligrams, right?
Something like that. And then I would probably have another coffee in the afternoon because, of course, my adrenals were pretty fried. So I would have that crash in the afternoon, need another coffee, and sometimes even maybe like an energy drink or something as well. That was at my worst, at my peak of really reliant on caffeine. And so to help with just getting my adrenals turned back on, I had to fully let go of caffeine for a period of time. So I actually completely stopped drinking caffeine other than just like the little bit of, trace caffeine in mud water and a little bit of like some matcha lattes here and there. But that was all I did for a good probably year and a half or so, close to 2 years. And so in 2024, I was like, all right, I still love coffee. I got to bring it back in my life. So that's where I just set hard limits for myself. No more than 125 milligrams of caffeine per day, because that's like we will buy like the stock brew, cold brew sometimes, and that's like one serving of that. Or sometimes like if I get a latte, I'll just get maybe 2 shots of espresso in it. But just that once per day is my limit. And I, if possible, try and stay lower than that.
I don't really know what to say on these. Well, I guess for that one I was going to say, and to clarify, mud water is an adaptogen, like coffee replacement, right?
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
Actual mud water that she's drinking. People are going like, what is wrong with
Yes, I go outside and I mix some mud into some water. No, it's a drink, and it is quite, I personally like it. It tastes more like tea than coffee, but it's a good one. Next on my list is warmer cold plunges.
I never thought I'd heard you say that.
I know. I always have been someone who would go for like the coldest tub, because we go to a place to do our cold plunging, and they have a couple of tubs, and typically they might have like 2 different temperatures available. I used to always go for whatever the coldest temperature was, and I would even like wait in line if there was a line to do it. I think it was earlier this year where I found some newer research specifically around women suggesting that it might be more beneficial for women to do warmer temperatures when it comes to cold plunging.
What's warmer?
Well, it depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know like the tubs there are like 37 and like 41. So what is like a desired, I guess, temp, would you say?
Yeah. So I try and it depends because like our place, they don't really give a lot of options. There was only two options.
37 or like 40, 41.
Yeah, I just go for the warmest that they have, which if we go in like afternoons, typically will be more where I want it, which is I typically want to be upper 40s, maybe
which is
even
still
50s.
Pretty cold. It's not.
Oh
like,
yeah, it's
warm.
still cold for sure. But like for example, we went this morning and the warmer temperature was 41, and so that's colder still than I probably should be doing for optimal health, but that's just something in general that I'm doing differently. Is in the past would like go as cold as possible, as long as possible, as frequently as possible when it came to plunging. Now I cycle it a little bit more. I do it more in my follicular phase, less in my luteal phase when my body is not as stress tolerant, and I try and go for the warmest option. Next on my list, this is one that I've been like nervous, I guess, to share.
Yeah,
because,
you don't share about this very often.
Yeah, well, so this is something I kind of more newly started doing this year. And again, this is something that is one of those things of like I trial it out for extended period of time. And like some things I trial out and I'm like, nope, not going to ever talk about that. Not going to ever continue doing that. Not for me, not something I would recommend for anybody. But some things I try out and I'm like, you know what, this has a lot of possible applications here, but I'm nervous to talk about it because most people still don't need this, or most people would actually probably feel worse doing this. The reason this specific thing has been feeling good for me is because of what I've done to get my body to where it can handle this and it can have positive outcomes and applications from doing it. And that thing is feast and fast cycles. So what does that mean? It means for periods of time, I eat much higher, calories. I eat more food. I might eat, like really high carb diets, things like that. And then I'll have periods where I'm fasting. And that might mean fasting, like time restriction fasting, like in intermittent fasting, or even longer, like 24 to, we even did one this year, 72-hour fast. And
we almost got in a fight after that one.
Yeah.
I was so angry.
Yeah, that was something. But like, again, trying out different things here, but more so what I more so do ongoing fasting is lighter time restriction fasting. So like I will in my follicular phase, when my body is most primed to handle something like that, I'm not doing any fasting when it comes to my luteal phase or anything like that. But during that time, I might do some light intermittent fasting, or I might mix in fasting of certain like macronutrients. Like I might fast from carbs a little bit to get my body kind of carb sensitive by restricting that again. So some of these like little very specific types of functional health protocols, they're not things that I typically talk about because a lot of women are already doing things like intermittent fasting and they are just screwing their bodies up by doing so. It is not good for your body if you have not primed your metabolism, really gotten rid of any existing cellular inflammation, and made sure that your body is in a spot where it can handle that type of stress and have positive adaptations from that stress, because it is a stressor through and through. Next on my list is sober cycles. And so this was something I kind of started doing by accident, and that is just not really drinking alcohol for periods of time. And it was never like an intentional of like, hey, I'm not going to have it for a period of time. It was more of just like, I started going longer and longer without having a drink. And then when I would have a drink, I would feel the difference more to where it made me less want to have a drink again. And so that's something I've just kind of found in this year that I want to carry into 2025, just going for periods of time without any alcohol. And I just find I really do feel so much better when I do that. But I'm not going to ever be, never say never, but at this point in time, I don't plan to be ever entirely sober, because that is still something I like to incorporate into my life in moderation, at the right times when it feels right for my body to do so.
I think even, for us specifically, I just genuinely, I don't really enjoy it very much, because to the point where I'm like, well, like if I'm not going to enjoy it and the next day I'm going to wake up feeling really crappy, then might as well not do it. But like I had, I think I had a beer like Christmas Eve and then a cocktail Christmas Day. And to me, I'm like, okay, that's great. That felt good and I was good there. So I think these sober periods that we've done, like you said, it's been more intentional. It's just been like, oh, I just don't enjoy it. And it just doesn't seem to bring me any benefits kind of thing.
Yeah. The reality is alcohol is, of course, a toxin in the body. And when you do ingest that toxin, your body does prioritize that for getting that cleared out of the body. So your liver is also responsible for a lot of other things, like your thyroid conversion, hormone, your thyroid hormone conversion. It's responsible for estrogen metabolism. It's responsible for a lot of other factors. So those other factors are going to be put on hold through that period of time that your body's getting that out. And that can be for a couple of days. So if you are consistently drinking, that means that you're giving your body multiple periods of time where it's not going to be detoxing other things as effectively, and there will be some downstream effects of that for a lot of people. Of course, every body is different. There's some people that I'm amazed at how much they drink and they seem to always feel okay. And I'm sure we all know some of those people, but I think most of us do feel a difference for sure. Last one on my list, and that is IV drips. So this is something that probably done maybe 4 times this year or so. I think I've probably done 1 a quarter. And it's typically any time that I was feeling sick or run down, like if I actually was sick, like when we had COVID over the summer, I would turn to an IV drip, usually something like a Myers cocktail, maybe add in some glutathione or something for a little bit extra inflammation support too. And I found that these can really get my body feeling so much better super fast. And there's, of course, a lot of scientific evidence for that, of just like the fact that an IV drip, you might be taking the same nutrients that maybe you take in supplement form, but you're just going to absorb them so much more effectively. It's near 100% absorption rate from an IV drip, as opposed to a pill might be like 50-60% or so. So big difference.
Do you know what else has glutathione in it? Avocados. I just learned that fact this morning, so I figured I would share.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for sharing.
Yep.
But that's all the things that I am taking from 2024 with me into 2025. And I'm sure some of these things are probably, for some of you intriguing of like, oh, maybe I want to try that. For a lot of you, there are going to be things on this list, or maybe it's the entire list that you're like, that does not appeal to me. Doesn't sound like it's right for me. And that's totally fine. I share these things to be very open and honest for those of you who are very interested in what are the things that I'm trying and liking. But I don't share these things as everybody should go and do these. I know a lot of these, even just a couple years ago, I would have been super intimidated by. I would have been like, no thanks, not doing that. It's something I've kind of evolved into as I've just gotten my body, my health, my body composition, how I feel in a great spot. And at this point, it's more of just having fun with trying different things to see how I can continue to add that 1% difference and optimize more and more, so that I can then take the things that really do have the biggest difference and bring those to my clients at Vital Spark. So that's all for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please share this, send it to a friend, put it on your Instagram story, get the word out there, and we hope that you have an amazing 2025.
Woo! Bye, everybody.